The ship's walls whispered with a mechanical hum, a constant reminder of the cold void outside. Kaylin's fingers glided over her console, eyes flickering between data streams. Her people, the Nivaren, prided themselves on being the galaxy's elite traders and diplomats. Yet here she was, stranded in the outskirts of a backwater system. The culprit, a human distress beacon. Kaylin grimaced as she adjusted the ship's scanners. Humans were often dismissed by the galaxy's more advanced species as primitive. Their technology was crude, their methods chaotic. But their unpredictability made them undeniably dangerous. Their appetite for destruction was legendary, and their erratic behavior made them a menace to civilized races. She'd been taught to avoid them at all costs. But the beacon's repetitive pulse nagged at her, a steady plea for help she couldn't ignore. Fools, she muttered. How can a race so fragile survive their own stupidity? Her ship's AI chimed in with a calm, mechanical precision, its clipped tones oddly incongruous with the tension crackling in the air, interrupting her thoughts. Proximity to the distress signal has been achieved. Initiating landing sequence. The vessel descended, kicking up a cloud of orange dust on the desolate planet below. Kaylin's antennas twitched with apprehension. This was supposed to be a quick reconnaissance, find the source of the signal and leave. Nothing more. She donned her breathing apparatus and stepped out, her boots crunching against the barren surface. The air shimmered with heat, distorting the jagged rocks around her. In the distance, a crude metallic structure loomed. The distress signal led her to a battered escape pod. Its hull was scorched, and the hatch hung ajar. Kaylin's translator implant buzzed as it picked up faint sounds. She tightened her grip on her plasma blade and approached. Inside the pod lay a human, unconscious and blooded. The acrid smell of burnt metal mingled with the faint iron tang of blood, making Kaylin's antennas twitch with unease. Her first instinct was to leave. Helping a human could invite complications she didn't want. But as she stared at his injuries, something stirred within her. Perhaps it was pity, or perhaps it was the faint glimmer of defiance in his face despite his condition. Reluctantly, she heaved him over her shoulder and carried him back to her ship. When the human woke, his confusion was palpable. His eyes darted around the sterile cabin, settling on Kaylin with a mixture of fear and wonder. She stood at a safe distance, arms crossed, her blue skin glowing faintly under the ship's lights. "Who are you?" he rasped, his voice weak but steady. Kaylin tilted her head. "The one who saved you. Not that you deserve it." The human gave a dry chuckle, wincing as he adjusted himself. "Could have left me there. Why didn't you?" "I ask myself the same question," she shot back. "What were you doing on that rock?" He hesitated, his gaze falling to the floor. "Name's Alex," he said finally. "Pilot. My ship got ambushed. Pirates." Kaylin's antennas twitched again. Pirates were common in this sector, but their boldness was growing. She didn't like it. "You're lucky to be alive," she said curtly. "I'll drop you off at the nearest station. After that, you're someone else's problem." Alex smirked despite his injuries. "Not much for small talk, huh?" Kaylin ignored him, turning her attention back to her controls. But as the hours passed, she found herself glancing his way. He was different from what she'd expected. Humans were supposed to be brutish, impulsive, and reckless. Alex, though battered, carried an air of resilience that unsettled her. Later that night, Kaylin awoke to a faint rustling sound. She grabbed her blade and crept toward the noise. To her surprise, she found Alex in the galley, scavenging for food. He'd bypassed the Ari's lockdown protocols with an unnerving confidence and speed. The precision of his actions left her momentarily stunned. She hadn't thought a human capable of such technical finesse without external help. "What are you doing?" she demanded. He froze, a protein bar halfway to his mouth. "Surviving," he said with a sheepish grin. "Didn't think you'd mind." Kaylin snatched the bar from his hand. "You're injured. Rest." "Can't rest on an empty stomach," he countered. She glared at him but handed the bar back. "Eat. But if you touch anything else without asking, I'll throw you out the airlock." He nodded, his expression softening. "Thanks, Kaylin," she said reluctantly. Captain Kalen of the Nivaren trade vessel Solaris. Well, Captain Kalen, I owe you one. She rolled her eyes and left him to his meal. But as she lay in her quarters, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd invited trouble aboard her ship. Alex was an enigma, and Kalen hated puzzles. The next day, the Solaris' sensors picked up an anomaly, a faint energy signature that didn't match anything in their database. Kalen's curiosity got the better of her. Against her better judgment, she decided to investigate. Alex, now mobile despite his injuries, joined her on the bridge. "What's the plan?" he asked, his voice tinged with excitement. "The plan is for you to stay out of the way," Kalen replied. "This is a Nivaren operation." "Come on," he said with a grin. "I've seen my fair share of anomalies. Might be useful." Kalen sighed but allowed him to stay. The ship approached the source of the signature, revealing a derelict station orbiting a gas giant. It was ancient, its hull covered in scorch marks and debris. Kalen's instincts screamed at her to turn back, but Alex's wide-eyed fascination was contagious. "Looks like it's been here for centuries," he said. "Who built it?" "Unknown," Kalen admitted. "But we're about to find out." The pair suited up and boarded the station. Its corridors were dark and cold, the air thick with the scent of decay. Strange symbols lined the walls, their meanings lost to time. Alex ran his fingers over them, his expression thoughtful. "This tech, it's not like anything I've seen before," he murmured. "Almost organic." Kalen nodded, her unease growing. The station felt alive. The faint hum of its machinery pulsed rhythmically, like the beat of a heart, and a subtle vibration underfoot made her antennas quiver, as if the structure itself was watching and waiting for their next move. She tightened her grip on her weapon, ready for anything. But as they approached the central chamber, a palpable tension filled the air. When they finally entered, what they found left them breathless with awe and dread, a massive, pulsating structure suspended in a crackling energy field, its alien design radiating a power both ancient and unfathomable. Suspended in a field of crackling energy was a massive, pulsating structure. It looked like a heart, its surface glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. Alex stepped closer, his awe evident. "What is that?" Kalen's voice was barely a whisper. "Power. Raw, untapped power." The realization hit them both at the same time. This was no ordinary station. It was a weapon, a relic from a forgotten war. And they were not alone. The sound of footsteps echoed behind them, and Kalen's heart raced. She turned to find a group of figures emerging from the shadows, their faces obscured by helmets. Their weapons were trained on her and Alex. "Intruders," one of them growled. "You've made a grave mistake." Kalen's mind raced as she calculated their odds of survival. But one thing was clear, the secrets of the station were worth killing for, and they just stumbled into the middle of a deadly game. Kalen's pulse quickened as the helmeted figures closed in, their weapons catching the faint, pulsating red glow of the station's eerie light, reflecting ominously off their polished surfaces. Alex edged closer to her, his posture tense, eyes flicking between their assailants as if calculating his next move. Internally, he steeled himself, recalling every scrap of survival training he'd ever endured. He had no weapon, no armor, yet his stance spoke of readiness, a defiant energy that seemed to surprise even their adversaries. "Intruders," the leader barked again, his voice distorted by a modulated filter. "Identify yourselves and your purpose." Kalen stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of non-aggression. "I am Captain Kalen of the Nivaren vessel Solaris. We detected an anomaly and came to investigate. We mean no harm. This station isn't for curious travelers," the leader snapped. "You've trespassed on forbidden ground." Alex interjected, his voice calm but firm. "We didn't know it was forbidden. If you let us leave, we'll be out of your way." The figures exchanged glances, their hesitation palpable. Kalen's sharp eyes caught a faint emblem on the leader's armor, a crescent moon encircled by jagged lines. It wasn't a symbol she recognized, but its deliberate design hinted at something significant, perhaps a faction or cult. "Your presence has already activated the station's core," the leader said, his tone dark. "Leaving isn't an option. You've seen too much." Kalen's fingers twitched toward her plasma blade. Her mind raced through potential scenarios. Diplomacy seemed unlikely to work, and they were outnumbered. She glanced at Alex, whose jaw tightened as he assessed the situation. "Then what do you want?" Kalen demanded. The leader tilted his head. "You will help us stabilize the core. Fail, and we all die when it implodes." Kalen and Alex were escorted deeper into the station, their weapons confiscated. The corridors became narrower, their surfaces pulsing faintly with the same organic energy as the core. Kalen's antennas quivered, her unease growing with every step. The faint vibrations beneath her feet carried a rhythmic cadence, while the acrid tang in the air reminded her of burnt metal and decay. Alex leaned toward her, his voice barely a whisper. "These guys seem scared of the core. What do you think it does?" "Power," she murmured. "But power for what? A weapon? A ship?" Before he could respond, they were pushed into a vast chamber. The core loomed above them, its rhythmic pulse filling the air with a low, resonant hum. It was more intricate up close, its surface covered in shifting patterns that seemed alive. "You have experience with ancient tech," the leader said, addressing Kalen. "We've seen Nivaren traders meddle with relics like this before. Use your skills." Kalen clenched her jaw, her thoughts racing as her tail flicked subtly in agitation. "And if I refuse?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt, though her antennas betrayed her tension. "You won't," he said simply. "Not if you value your life and his." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Nice to know I'm leverage." Kalen shot him a warning look before approaching the core. Its energy rippled as she drew near, and her translator implant buzzed with static. She examined the console beneath it, its alien symbols glowing faintly. The interface was unlike anything she'd encountered, but certain patterns reminded her of Nivaren relics she'd studied in her youth. "It's a containment system," she muttered. "The core's energy is unstable. If it's not calibrated correctly, it'll explode. Can you stabilize it?" Alex asked. Kalen's fingers hovered over the console. "Maybe. But I'll need time." "Time is something we don't have," the leader snapped. "The core has been destabilizing since you arrived. Work faster." Kalen ignored him, her focus narrowing to the symbols and their intricate patterns. As she worked, Alex kept a watchful eye on the helmeted figures. He noticed subtle shifts in their stances, the way their hands lingered near their weapons. They were afraid, not just of the core but of something else. "Kalen," Alex said softly. "We're not getting the whole story here." "I know," she murmured. "But first, we need to survive." Minutes dragged by, each one thick with tension. Kalen painstakingly deciphered the console's alien symbols, her focus narrowing as the core's erratic pulses throbbed like an insistent warning. The core's pulses grew more erratic, its energy flaring in unpredictable bursts. Sweat beaded on her brow as she manipulated the controls, each adjustment feeling like a gamble. Alex's instincts screamed at him to act. He'd spent years surviving impossible odds, and the current situation felt no different. He inched closer to the leader, his movements subtle. If a fight broke out, he'd need to be ready. Suddenly, a deafening roar echoed through the chamber. The core flared, bathing the room in blinding light. The helmeted figures shouted in panic, their formation fracturing as they stumbled. The blinding flare of light seared through the chamber, its heat palpable even from a distance. Alex seized the moment. He lunged at the leader, wresting a weapon from his grasp with a surprising burst of strength. "Kalen, move," he shouted, firing a warning shot into the air. Kalen's head shot up, her eyes wide with alarm as she processed the escalating chaos. Fragments of escape plans flickered through her mind, each more desperate than the last. She abandoned the console and sprinted toward Alex, who was already backing toward the exit. The helmeted figures recovered quickly, their weapons trained on the pair. "Stop them," the leader bellowed. Kalen and Alex ducked behind a column as plasma bolts streaked past them. The chamber erupted into chaos, the core's energy surging wildly. Sparks rained down as the station's systems overloaded, alarms blaring in a discordant symphony. "We need to disable the core," Kalen yelled over the noise. "Thought you were doing that already," Alex retorted, firing another shot to keep their attackers at bay. Kaelin glared at him but didn't argue. She darted back to the console, her fingers flying over the controls. The core's pulses grew erratic, its glow intensifying to a blinding brilliance. Alex covered her, his aim steady despite the chaos. Almost there, Kaelin muttered, her voice tight with concentration. Just a little more. The leader let out a guttural roar, surging toward Alex with wild, uncalculated fury. His movements spoke of desperation, as though protecting something far more valuable than his own life. Alex sidestepped the attack, delivering a swift blow that sent the leader sprawling. But the distraction cost him. A plasma bolt grazed his shoulder, searing through his jacket. He hissed in pain but didn't falter. Got it. Kaelin shouted as the console beeped. The core's energy stabilized, its pulses slowing to a steady rhythm. The chamber's alarms fell silent, replaced by an oppressive stillness. The helmeted figures froze, their weapons lowered. The leader struggled to his feet, his helmet askew. He glared at Kaelin and Alex, his fury palpable. "This isn't over," he growled. "You've only delayed the inevitable." Kaelin reached out to help Alex to his feet, her gaze steely but softened by the flicker of unspoken gratitude for their shared survival and fragile alliance. "Maybe. But for now, we're alive." Together, they backed toward the exit, leaving the leader and his followers to their anger and confusion. As the door sealed behind them, Kaelin let out a shaky breath. "That was too close," she said. Alex smirked despite his injury. Just another day in the galaxy. But Kaelin's mind raced with questions. Who were these people? What was the core's true purpose? And why did its energy resonate with a strange familiarity, as if it were calling to her? She didn't have answers yet, but the core's strange resonance lingered in her thoughts, a haunting melody that seemed to whisper of mysteries yet to come and dangers yet to face. The Solaris sped through the cold expanse of space, the stars streaking past the viewport like silvery veins of light. Alex slumped in the co-pilot's seat, pressing a bandage against his scorched shoulder. Kaelin stood at the console, her hand steady despite the tremor in her voice. A mix of apprehension and determination coursed through her as she mentally prepared for what lay ahead. "We need answers," she said, her antennas twitching. "Whatever that core was, it's not just some forgotten relic," she said, her mind replaying the strange resonance, a pulse that had felt almost like a living heartbeat while she worked on it. Alex winced as he adjusted his position. "You're telling me that leader back there was ready to kill us over it? What's your guess? Weapon? Energy source?" Kaelin turned to face him, her expression grim. "It's more than that. When I worked on the console, I felt something. Like it was alive, aware of me. That kind of technology is beyond anything I've ever seen." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Alive? You're saying that thing had a mind of its own?" "Maybe not a mind, but definitely an intent," Kaelin replied, her eyes narrowing as she struggled to put the unsettling sensation into words. "And I don't think it was built by anyone in this galaxy." A heavy silence filled the cabin, broken only by the soft hum of the ship. Alex's gaze shifted to the viewport, where the distant glow of a nebula painted the darkness in hues of violet and gold. "So, where does that leave us?" he asked. Kaelin's fingers danced over the console. "There's a Nivaren archive station not far from here. If anyone has records of technology like that, it'll be them." The archive station loomed ahead, its sleek, spire-like structure orbiting a gas giant. The swirling clouds of the planet below glowed faintly, casting an ethereal light onto the polished surface of the station. Kaelin guided the Solaris into one of its docking bays, her movements precise but tense. As the ship settled, a holographic interface activated, greeting them with a soft, melodic tone. "Welcome, Captain Kaelin," the AI intoned. "State your purpose." Kaelin straightened. "I need access to the restricted archives on pre-galactic artifacts." The AI hesitated. "Access to those files requires authorization from the Council of Curators. Your current clearance is insufficient." Kaelin scowled. "Then get me a curator." The Ari's glow dimmed momentarily, signaling its compliance. Moments later, a figure materialized on the holographic interface. Elder Curator Val, a Nivaren with pale, mottled skin and an air of scholarly authority, regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "Captain Kalen," Val said. "To what do we owe this unannounced visit?" Kalen's antennas flicked in subtle frustration. "I've encountered something unprecedented. A core, ancient and unstable. It's unlike any artifact we've catalogued, and it's dangerous." Val's gaze sharpened. "Describe it," Val said, his tone edged with both curiosity and a hint of unease. Kalen relayed everything: the station, the core's pulsating energy, and the strange resonance she felt while interacting with it. Val listened intently, his expression growing darker with each detail. "You're describing a relic from the Elders Beyond," he said finally. "Their artifacts are exceedingly rare, and their purpose remains shrouded in mystery. But if the core is active, it could signal a threat beyond comprehension." Alex leaned forward. "Who are these Elders Beyond? Some ancient civilization?" Val's eyes narrowed. "Not merely ancient," Val said, his voice dropping to a grave whisper. "They're believed to predate this galaxy's formation, existing long before our understanding of time and space could even take root. Their technology defies our understanding, operating on principles we can barely begin to grasp." Kalen's voice was tight. "So what do we do? If that core is part of their legacy, what's it doing out here?" Val's silence was heavy with implication. "There are those who would seek to control such power. If you've encountered one relic, there may be more. And wherever there are relics, there will be chaos." Alex frowned. "Sounds like you're saying we just stumbled into the galaxy's biggest nightmare." Val's gaze lingered on them, unblinking. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you've been chosen to stop it." The Solaris departed the station with new coordinates and a weight of responsibility that neither Kalen nor Alex could ignore. The curator had given them access to encrypted files detailing sightings of similar relics. Most were fragmented records, but one stood out, a reference to an artifact on a barren moon in a nearby system. Kalen reviewed the data as Alex piloted the ship. The reports are inconsistent, but they all mention the same thing: a structure that reacts to proximity, almost like it's alive. Alex chuckled darkly. "Great. Another death trap." Kalen shot him a look. "If we're going to figure out what's happening, we need to follow the trail. That moon is our best lead." Their journey was uneventful at first, though an inexplicable heaviness seemed to settle over the ship as they approached the moon. The faint hum of the engines grew ominous, and then, as if responding to the moon's unseen force, the systems began to falter. Alarms blared, and the controls grew sluggish. "What's happening?" Kalen demanded. Alex's hands flew over the controls. "Some kind of interference. It's like the ship's systems are being overridden." The Solaris shuddered violently as it descended through the moon's thin atmosphere. Alex fought to keep the ship steady, his knuckles white against the controls. They landed with a jarring thud, the ship's lights flickering ominously. Kalen unstrapped herself and grabbed her equipment, slinging a compact scanner and a utility pack over her shoulder. The scanner's interface flickered briefly, designed to detect anomalies but barely functioning in the interference. "We're here. Let's move before something else goes wrong." The surface of the moon was bleak and desolate, its landscape dominated by jagged rocks and a pale, ghostly light. In the distance, a faint glow marked the location of the structure. Kalen and Alex trudged through the harsh terrain, their steps crunching against the brittle ground. As they approached, the glow intensified, revealing a monolithic structure embedded in the ground. Its surface was smooth and seamless, its edges radiating a faint, otherworldly energy. Kalen's antennas twitched as she felt the same resonance she'd experienced with the core. "This is it," she murmured. "Another relic." Alex scanned the area. No welcoming committee this time. "I'll take that as a good sign." Kalen wasn't so sure. As they drew closer, the structure began to hum, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through their bones. Symbols appeared on its surface, glowing faintly and pulsing with an eerie rhythm that matched the structure's deep hum. The shifting patterns seemed alive, as though they were studying Kalen and Alex in return. "It's responding to us," Kalen said, her voice tinged with awe. "Or warning us," Alex countered. The hum grew louder, and the ground beneath them trembled. Kalen reached out to touch the structure, her fingers brushing against its surface. The moment she made contact, a surge of energy shot through her, and the world around them shifted. The desolate moon dissolved into a kaleidoscope of light and sound. Kaylin and Alex suddenly found themselves in an endless void, their breaths hitching at the surreal emptiness around them. The structure floated before them, its rhythm echoing their racing hearts as its glow enveloped them, both beautiful and overwhelming. "What is this?" Alex whispered. Kaylin's voice was barely audible. "I think it's a gateway." Kaylin and Alex stood in the void, their breaths shallow as the structure pulsed with an ancient, deliberate rhythm. The hum vibrated through their bodies, leaving an almost electric sensation on their skin and deepening their sense of awe and unease. The glow enveloping them intensified, and for a moment, Kaylin felt weightless, unmoored from reality. Her antennas twitched, picking up vibrations she couldn't comprehend, a melody that resonated deep within her. "What is this place?" Alex whispered, his voice barely audible. Kaylin's gaze remained fixed on the floating structure. "A remnant of the elders beyond," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "This isn't just a gateway," Kaylin said, her voice trembling with realization. "It's a beacon, a message meant to remind us of the dangers of forgetting our place in the universe." The symbols on the structure's surface began to shift again, forming intricate patterns that Kaylin instinctively recognized. Her mind raced as fragments of ancient scripts she'd studied aligned. A sense of urgency gripped her as she deciphered the language's profound meaning, its warnings echoing in her thoughts. Her translator implant buzzed, struggling to decode the meaning. Then, in a sudden burst of clarity, the message became clear. The legacy of creation is not power, but balance. To seek control is to invite ruin. The words resonated like a solemn truth, weaving together their discoveries with the catastrophic visions they had just witnessed of civilizations crumbling under the weight of their ambition. Kaylin's chest tightened. "It's a warning," she murmured. Alex frowned. "A warning about what?" "Us," Kaylin said, her voice heavy. "About what happens when we tamper with forces we don't understand. The core, this gateway, they're not meant to be controlled. They're meant to remind us of our place in the universe." As the structure's light intensified, the void around them dissolved into a cascade of swirling colors. Ethereal sounds filled the air, leaving them suspended in a surreal, disorienting transition between realities. In its place, a vision unfolded, countless civilizations rising and falling, their hubris leading to their demise. The images were vivid, overwhelming, a kaleidoscope of triumph and tragedy. Kaylin and Alex watched in silence, the weight of the message sinking in. The vision faded, leaving them standing once again on the desolate moon. The structure remained, but its glow had dimmed, as if it had exhausted its energy. "So what now?" Alex asked, his voice subdued. Kaylin turned to him, her expression resolute and her antennas stiff with purpose. Inwardly, she braced herself for the enormity of the task ahead. "We make sure this doesn't fall into the wrong hands. No matter what it takes. The core, this relic, they need to stay hidden. If someone tries to use them, it could destroy everything." Alex nodded, a rare seriousness in his eyes. "And if someone finds them anyway?" Kaylin's antennas twitched. "Then we'll do what we have to. But for now, we make sure the galaxy knows what we've learned." Back aboard the Solaris, Kaylin meticulously transmitted a heavily encrypted report to the Nivaren Council. Her message laid bare the relic's potential for catastrophic misuse, warning of devastation should they fall into the wrong hands. The urgency of their secrecy weighed heavily on her. She knew the message would reach only a few trusted allies, but it was a start. Alex leaned against the console, watching her work. "You think they'll listen?" Kaylin sighed. "Some will. Others won't. But it's the truth. That's all we can give them." As the ship drifted away from the moon, Alex stared out at the stars. "It's funny," he said. "We spend so much time fighting each other, chasing power, and here we are, being told it's all pointless." Kaylin joined him at the viewport, her expression contemplative. "Not pointless," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Just misguided. Real strength comes from understanding and unity, not domination or division. The elders beyond didn't leave these relics to tempt us. They left them to teach us. Balance isn't something we take. It's something we nurture. Alex nodded, a faint smile crossing his lips. So what now? We go back to trading and dodging pirates. Kalen's antennas flicked in amusement. For now. But if the galaxy needs us again, we'll be ready. The Solaris disappeared into the stars, its path uncertain but its crew forever changed. Kalen carried the weight of their discoveries like a solemn vow, while Alex reflected on the fragile balance they were now charged to protect. The relics of the elders beyond were not just artifacts of the past, they were mirrors, reflecting the potential and flaws of those who found them. Kalen and Alex carried their message forward, a quiet promise to protect the delicate balance the universe so desperately needed. And in the vastness of space, the stars burned on, silent witnesses to the truth the elders beyond had left behind, that even in the face of infinite power, only humility, balance, and wisdom could truly endure, shaping the destiny of those who dared to learn.